knows where these Kaufman students are going to. No one will consider them going to Myers, even though this school board thought it was the best idea to combine Myers and Kaufman. But no, it's not a good idea to take those Kaufman kids down into the Myers territory to have them go to the school where there's room. I don't understand it. And maybe there's things that we need to understand, but frankly, nobody's willing to talk to us. Nobody is. The other thing that bothers me is, I sat here in September, and administrators gave themselves raises, significant raises. And there was no talk in September that we had a financial crunch. I'm sitting here in May, and you're cutting out programs and teachers, and all of a sudden, all the millions of dollars we have are gone. And I have no idea why they are gone. And I have no idea why I didn't know that in September when people were giving each other's raises. I am angry, but I care for the Wilkes Barre schools. But I think, and I agree with Ms. Katzuk on one thing, I think we all have to start to work together. We're in a terrible situation. I read the paper, the Wilkes Barre, we're on the bottom. We're a bottom feeder when it comes to all the school districts. And that's not good. And we have to do something about it. We have to work together. You people, we will respect you if you respect us and start to listen to the people who elected you. Thanks.
I, too, am a student of history, and while he's not the most popular founding father currently, Thomas Jefferson had something important to say that you should listen to. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. That is the only sure reliance on the preservation of liberty and our country. You have a responsibility as a school board to educate and inform, and you have failed in both of those responsibilities. You have failed in education. As my mother stated, we are following behind all of the other school districts. You are cutting teachers. You are cutting teachers without certain plans in place. Replacing 3 secondary education art teachers does not solve the gap you left in your budget plan from last month. In fact, I don't necessarily believe that you truly understand the extent that that happened. But I don't know whether you truly understand that because you've also failed in informing. We are in the dark. We wander around without the information we need to make educated decisions about our schools. You continually have this refrain. You would understand our decisions in cutting the budget. You would understand our decisions in making a new school. You would understand our decisions to adding GAR to that new school if only you had all of the information. If you had all of the information, you would understand what we're thinking. Well, give it to us. We're educated, we're intelligent, and we can understand information. It is not a good precedent for government agencies to make decisions telling the populace they don't understand. They don't have all the information. That's how we got into Vietnam. That's how we got into Iraq. Organizations thinking that they cannot give people the information and they cannot create a discourse. And I'm really excited about this bond issue, that you think we're going to get a great deal based on the back of the collapse of the European Union and the Great Britain's economy. But maybe you should take a minute and think about what happened last week. What happened last week was the government and people promised people savings. They said you're gonna make $350 million once we get out of the European Union. They voted and they said, oh wait, we don't have a plan. We don't know how to stop immigration. Oh wait, we don't have a plan. We don't know how to put that money back into the economy. Oh wait, we don't have a plan. We're losing Scotland and Northern Ireland. That is exactly what you're doing. You make decisions and then say, wait, we don't have a plan. So you failed at educating and you failed at informing. But I'm going to take this moment to educate and inform you. because I too was offended by statements made. So here's my education. We should have debate. Debate is a formal discussion between two groups with differing opinions. I stood here last month and watched a discussion? No. I watched hundreds of people say one side and you stonewall us and not say one word in your defense or explanation or justification. So that wasn't a debate. I'd love a debate. And I'd also like to inform you what the definition of slander is. Slander is an untrue statement made. It is not untrue that you don't have a plan. It's not untrue that you don't listen to us. It is not untrue that you do not take every member of this community into consideration. So statements made about you, I'm sorry, they're not slander. And I would welcome an open and honest debate with all of you. But we have yet to even have a discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. My wife and daughter are more optimistic than I am. I think coming up here and speaking to you is pointless. I think having other people here has a point. And I would echo first what Sarah had to say. The most concerning issue for me is not that you don't listen to what is said, because you sit here, you hear it. But there is no deliberation. There is no sunshine of consideration. We have no idea what your points of view are with respect to the issues that are presented. You tolerate these meetings. It's been a year now that I've been coming to virtually every meeting, and I've been to meetings before, but it's been a full year, and we are no further along in understanding your plan. We really are not. We have nothing but ad hoc decision-making as we go along. And I'm not, at this point, at all optimistic that we're ever going to hear it. A decision will be made, a vote will be taken, it'll be adjusted at the next meeting, and we go along this path with no explanation and no plan. So my point is simply this. There is an alternative that we have demonstrated will save taxpayers money, and the taxpayers and the students are your two most important constituent bases. The plan is very simple. You repair, not replace. You take care of the assets you already have and utilize them. You construct one smaller school on the Plains footprint here near Solomon, and you move forward at much less construction expense. We have already learned, without necessarily the school board's assistance and disclosure, but we have already learned that the idea of the need for seismic bracing at Myers in order to repair it and maintain it as a school is false. Seismic bracing was not required at the Geisinger project at the old Mercy site in South Wilkes-Barre, 500 feet away from the gateway to Myers. We have no reason to believe seismic bracing was required at the Wilkes-Barre General Hospital when they added floors there. And that $25 million ticket, which is the justification for not repairing Myers, is not a basis. And I'm not asking questions now. I'm asserting that that's what we understand. We understand that it will cost less to repair assets we already have than construct new ones and abandon buildings in our neighborhoods. As far as operating costs are concerned, we understand that there's a theoretical idea that costs can be reduced with consolidation. It's theoretical. But we know from our studies that it has never happened in previous experience with other consolidated schools. Operating costs do not go down. They have not gone down. The life of the law, we are told as lawyers, is not logic, it's experience. And you cannot point to me, and you have not pointed to me, and I'm not going to ask anymore, of any circumstance that you've studied in which that happened. As far as what Sarah said and what Ruth said about Coughlin, Coughlin is being sacrificed on the altar of other objectives here. Another year is coming. There is no plan for these students. I spoke with Mr. Quinn at the meeting at Kistler, and I said, what possible reason do you have, Mr. Quinn, for not attempting to find space at Myers with a series of modulars along the wall of the football stadium to allow both Myers students and Coughlin students to share the pain there of having to spend some time in modulars, with common areas for all the students, the gym, the cafeteria, the labs, as opposed to condemning Coughlin students from the township as well as Plains, condemning Coughlin students to the annex and leaving them at Natchez, the other half, or condemning them to split schedules. And the only answer, Mr. Quinn, that you gave me was, I'm not going to make kids travel all the way down to South Wilkes Barre when they're already on a bus, sometimes for many minutes. Now, the distance between Coughlin and Myers as an excuse for not considering utilization of assets we already have is unacceptable. And I'm here to tell the people here, not you, your minds are made up, that that plan is the proper plan. That's what must be done, and that's what you must insist on. If you have students at Coughlin, you must insist that they not continue to be used for political utility here. That can't continue to happen. And I'm not done talking about students from schools other than Myers. We went up to GAR. I was one of those people that had to choose, as the GR students apparently have to choose daily, between being hit by a car on Sherman Street or not being on the right side of the street with the fencing that's there. And that bothered me. That was a concern. It's a neighborhood. I don't see the danger that's being protected from there. Again, I think it's political instrumentation. But you recognize, I hope, that you have 5 fire exits that open directly into that fence. And the fence is no more than 8 feet from the wall, and no more than 8 feet from the fire exits. If there were a fire, and safety is a predominant interest here, which is one of the reasons we can't get information, because we aren't safe enough to receive it. You've got 5 fire exits that open directly into a fence. If there were, heaven forbid, a fire at that building, and you have hundreds of students coming out of those 5 fire exits directly into a fence, you're talking about a catastrophe. It looks really good in this sense. It looks like we've got to do something with GAR. We've got to build, maybe we've got to build sheds like we do at Myers. That political utility, that political gamesmanship has got to end. Thank you.
Just want to make sure I have it clear in my head, for the record, Attorney Board. You are recommending strongly that the Coughlin 11th and 12th graders, the district at Myers has put them inside the stadium at Myers and that they attend there. That's what you are recommending?
Yes. What I'm recommending is the ability to maintain 2 schools within that school with 4 or 5 modulars. That's enough space to use additional classroom space. The Coughlin students would have their own classes. To the extent there could be cooperative classes, that could work. That's fine. The Myers students would use the modulars just like the Coughlin students would use the modulars. Our understanding from our assessment of the situation and our knowledge of the building, it's doable. You're not talking about combining both schools into Myers. You're talking about combining 2 more classes at Coughlin there. It is economically feasible. It can be done. And it's a much better environment. Notwithstanding Mr. Quinn's concerns about South Wilkes Barre, it's a much better environment for those Coughlin students. Until we solve the problem of where we're going and have a plan, it's a much better place for the Coughlin students to go, still have their own Coughlin identity. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Our next speaker is Joe Baldwin. I want to throw one thing in. There's 500 kids at Coughlin. And you're going to fit them in 2 or 3 or 4 trailers?
No, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me.
You're not listening to me. And I did talk about transportation at, where was the last meeting?
The last meeting was at GER.
All right.
Second to last meeting was at Kistler. It's never at Myers, which has a beautiful auditorium. But let me say this. We are saying that the modulars will be used by all the students in that building, Myers and Coughlin, and be used efficiently and effectively. The students then will share the common spaces that we already have at Myers that are underutilized gym, the labs, the cafeteria, all that common space, the auditorium, and there is enough space and enough opportunity to do that. We're not talking about all those, modules being used by any one group. They're going to be share the pain with everybody here. But what is your plan, Mr. Quinn? Is your plan split schedules?
No, it wasn't. My plan from the very beginning was the Times Leader, which
You prefer a printing building to Myers.
printing building, it'll be fixed up. Have you been in Mackin since it was fixed up?
I've been in the Times Leader building.
Have you been there since?
The Mackin building was not built as a substitute high school. It was built it was renovated for a totally different reason. And on the fly, on an emergency crisis basis, you put 2 classes of Coughlin up there. And I don't think the Coughlin families are that happy about it. Mackin's nice.
Well,
That's great. And the Penzinas did a wonderful job there. That's great. You're lucky. All right? The fact of the matter is that school at Myers was built as a school, it's used as a school, it's a school. It's not a printing plant.
Joe Borman?
Well, my first question always, have we had any more submissions to the state on PlanCon? Not yet. And to clarify, I think what Kim was saying at the end here is that, yes, Mackin, I think, worked out well. I liked it when I saw it, but you're talking about converting a school into a school. That's different from converting an old industrial building with non-point source pollution and any other number of issues you get from dumping ink for, 100 years around the floors of the Times Leader building and converting that into a school. Those are fundamentally different things. When you start trying to move an industrial building into a school use for children, it's different than making a school into a school for children. And quite frankly, Myers is a school that's standing already. I've been to these board meetings for over a year as well. And I heard a lot from this board in particular about old boards. I don't want to get too far into old boards, but I think everyone in the room could acknowledge that they hadn't been the best, that there were issues with the old boards, that if things were done earlier, maybe we wouldn't have some of the problems we have now. But I've been very frustrated at the continual passing of the buck to the old boards, and I believe that that hasn't been necessarily warranted. That there were problems on this board's horizon that they didn't look at for everyone sitting at the tables up here. So since now I have a specific question that doesn't really involve anybody who's not sitting up here about management within the district, I would like an answer without being told it was an issue of the old school boards. And this goes down to planning. Over the last 3 years, the old school boards left what in the government we would call a surplus, which would be your general fund. $12, $14 million, I don't know the number exactly. But over the last 3 years, this board has used that surplus left by the old boards that caused all the problems to close their own budget gaps at this very meeting every year. Now, for 3 years, they'd have to look at that general fund and realize they're not running a surplus, we're running a deficit. So what are we going to do in 3 years when that general fund runs out? Well, as we found out at the last meeting, there was never any real consideration of that. Because on the fly, we had to let go a significant percentage of teachers because we had no plan in advance on what to do when our general fund ran out. Now, since most of you sitting on this board right now have been sitting here for the last 3 years, I think if you would like to give this room an explanation on why there was no planning in advance, so we had to go to one of the most drastic measures I could possibly think of once our general fund ran out, instead of planning in advance on what to do when we ran out of that money and could no longer close our budget gaps.
Board member.
You want to address the question, Mr. Laura?
Okay, I will. Reason I was questioning how you see it was that we were facing a deficit. And not just a couple months ago. I'm a little surprised when I hear some of the things that are said about we didn't know this, we didn't know that. All of the reports that we've done are online. They are, I mean, there isn't a report that's hidden somewhere. We talked about a deficit that our business department brought to the public and to the board quite a while ago. public didn't believe that we were telling the truth. So we then contacted PDE, who sent in an independent firm to take a look at our situation. BFM, they presented here in March. Our projections might have been a little conservative. Theirs might have been a little aggressive. It's been out there. It's been talked about, and it didn't just come up in May.
So what were the implementations in order to close that budget gap instead of having a $6 million deficit in 1 year? What was implemented by this district to help close that budget gap?
So the budgeting process, every year is an ongoing process. The new process begins as soon as the budget is passed. You can imagine what school districts across the state has to do this particular year, this past budget year, was to pass a budget on June 30th. And the state hadn't passed the budget, and the state didn't pass that budget until we all know when it was passed. So even though the vast majority of our funding is or a great portion of our funding is coming from the state, we got to pass a budget, not knowing what the state is going to provide us. We're facing the same thing this particular year. I doubt the budget's going to be passed by the state in time.
Well, I'm well aware of the issues in Harrisburg, and I'm well aware that all districts across the board felt the issues in Harrisburg. But I think it's disingenuous to say that our financial problems are due to delayed checks from the state.
No, we're not talking about delayed check, we're talking about what you're going to get.
But yet,
What's your funding going to be from the state?
so why are we
If you
moving,
don't know that number, how do you do your budget?
but we're moving forward on a capital project that's completely reliant on receiving funding from the state that no school district has received in 8 years, as far as Plan Con money.
All of the legislation that has recently been passed gives us every reason to believe that our Plan-Con funded projects are going to be funded by Plan-Con.
Even though no one has received any of that funding in 8 years.
Well, let's say we just passed the bill, we issued bonds for I don't know how many billions of dollars to fund an obligation.
This is, Joe, this to me, I think, in respectful back and forth here, PlanCon is now a law. And of course, there are ongoing conversations as to how all of that is going to come together. But it is a law now. And I hear repeatedly that for a year now, that it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. There were jokes made about us, why we made that decision. If no one's received the money in 8 years, and maybe it will take that long to get that money. But I don't know how down the road a board would not want to try to get that money for a school district. It would, to me, be really irresponsible to not participate in what they say. I got another thing here. We constantly hear about the renovation of buildings being a better way to recoup Plan-Con funds. There are some, it's not exactly what you're saying. The Plan-Con expert commented on tonight. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm an expert. I think I have a little knowledge about Plan-Con. I can look at it, I pay attention to it. I've spoken to Jim Vogel several times on the phone. I also went to a group with South from Harrisburg to discuss these issues. And it's a little different. So this idea that the district is wrong and has it backwards, that there's more money to be gained in renovation, is not exactly accurate.
Well, I'll say the same. I looked over every Plan-Con application for the last 5 years. We did a right to know request with the state. It was given right to us. Actually, we didn't even have to put the request in. They just sent it to us. They said, if you're going to file it, have it. I talked to multiple members of, I won't say committee up there, but whose job is to implement Plan-Con. And so I have a little bit of knowledge as well. And I think the fundamental issue with just calling it a law is that it's a voluntary process by the Department of Education. They don't have to give it. They don't have to give it at the percentage they're giving it at. And it's completely reliant on their funding. So on my end, it's still a little disingenuous to say this is locked down. I get what you're saying about trying to get it, but at the beginning we were told you can't get it because they won't give it to renovations. And then I talked to Harrisburg and they say that's not true whatsoever. So
I searched the board, the minutes of any meeting to see if I said that.
I'm not saying you in particular. I'm saying that I was told that.
Josh, I can unequivocally say you've never conveyed that information, because clearly a renovation project will qualify for Plan-Con. There's no no doubt about that. We put bracket in for that very reason, so that we never say.
Well, I guess I should extend it. The Department of Education has not made it sound to me that they have to increase the size of classrooms, which was said by the board, in order to receive Plan Con money.
I was on a conversation, on a conference call with Jim Vogel, where that very information was conveyed to us by the representative, I think he's an architect, at Plain Council. He expressly said that to us. If classroom sizes don't meet X, they're not eligible for reimbursement.
So we have to figure out why Harrisburg is giving us two different sets of information. All right? Thank you.
You also like to speak about Plain?
Mr. Brown, before you start, I just want to publicly acknowledge your help, your contribution in regard to the sheds. You had said that you wanted to contribute towards the painting of the sheds for Myers graduation, and on behalf of the district, we thank you for that.
Thank you. I was more than happy to contribute and hopefully offset the cost to paint those sheds for our kids. I have several questions I'd like to pose to you. You can either answer them after I ask the question or wait till the end, whatever is best for you folks. But first of all, in the event that zoning does not approve building a school on the Kaufman site, what other sites have you identified that may be possible sites to build a school? Secondly, if that should occur, where zoning does not approve it and you cannot get the approval, does that mean that in South Wilkes Barre, the Myers site may be a viable option since the school district does own that property? I understand there might be soil issues that raise the cost, but would the cost be less than the cost of renovating the Times Leader building? The board thought that building was worth the investment to make on Washington Street. Maybe it's a viable option to make a similar investment in the building at Myers. How long would a denial from the zoning board delay the project? What happens to the Kaufman kids in the meantime if that zoning board does deny your request? It elongates an already uncomfortable situation for those students. Is there any consideration for Plains? What additional costs would be associated to Plains or discontinuing? They're my questions. So if someone would like to maybe answer these questions.
If you don't mind, I'll.
Please, go ahead.
If the zoning is not approved, what the sites will be considered in our plan con documentation. All of the sites that were considered by the board, the feasibility study will be in play with regards to potential sites for building the school. That would be the two sites in Plains, the Myers site. That was it. Yeah, that was it. Those three sites. So it would be Myers and two sites in Plains. Actually, three sites in Plains because one of them is in Lansford. So it would be three sites in Plains and Myers. So that was answer your question with regard to Myers. The Myers site conceivably would be in play.
So it would be a possible option.
It hasn't been excluded by anything that we filed with the state or anything like that. The other question was, how long would the denial delay the project?
And the answer to that is, it's unknown at this point, it varies. It depends on what, what the status is. Is it a denial by the board where justification appeal, is it a denial, is it granted by the board with justification appeal, is it a denial by the board with school justification appeal? There's a lot of variables to that are difficult to project. I assume lawyers in the room would all agree that it's pretty difficult to give a time frame on how litigation could conceivably delay something, but certainly there will be a delay if there is litigation ensuing.
Well, the other question is soil issues that have been brought to light about Myers property. You're going to invest a lot of money into this Times Leader building. Isn't it better to invest that money or those monies into eliminating the soil issues that we may have at Myers investing they can in that Myers property. Folks, I'm very, very concerned about what's gonna happen when we shut down that Myers building. I'm very concerned as a person that lives in that area, property values, I'm very concerned about the safety of that property. And if you leave a building empty, we all know, when I was on city council, what we dealt with on the Sterling building. Don't want to go through that again, so please, I'm asking for your help in educating us. What do you have planned for that Myers building? Are you gonna leave it empty? Do you have other plans? Can you share that with us?
Try to continue to answer your question towards the last one, which is regard to additional costs if we go somewhere else. Clearly, one of the major factors in the board's decision to choose the North Washington site was the reduced cost of not having to acquire the site, number one, because we already own it. Number two, we know there's a certain stability in the downtown location that the Myers site does not have, that this site does not have, where predictability when it comes to foundation systems and what needs to be put into the ground before you start building the building. All of the engineering that needs to be done and all of the work that needs to be done to make sure the site is stable. The Washington Street site is hands down the best site that we've looked at in that process. And that was one of the big factors as to why Washington Street made sense, because it does have that stability and predictability. If we have to go somewhere else, we will certainly be faced with additional costs. Number one, for engineering. Number two, for remediation. And number three, foundation system. So it's likely that if we went to Myers, that's the cost we would have. We would also have those costs for employment, because we know from the construction of this particular building that a fairly sophisticated foundation system was required to erect the building. We have no reason to think that the adjacent land would not have similar issues that would need to be remediated at cost. And clearly, if we're looking at the Piscatini site or the Pagnati site, you have the acquisition cost. For Piscatini, you have demolition costs. For Pagnati, you have infrastructure costs to get water, sewer, electric to that site. So every other site has additional costs.
One last thing, and I'll leave the podium. I asked you to please explore every option, but also, Mr. Caffrey, Ms. Thomas, I ask you to please consider meeting with these people, with the board of directors and the people that are part of Saylor Schools. At least listen to what they have to say. Don't close your mind. At least listen to the suggestions they have, Dr. Shearwood, Dr. Hallidick, other people that are here. Schedule an hour meeting. At least have an open mind and talk to them. That's all I'm asking you to do.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
If that were to occur,
Yes, sir.
would that open-mindedness be reciprocated?
I can't speak for the other people. I would tell you my opinion. I would say yes. These people, I'll be honest with you. I was one of the people that started SOS with 60 people that are here tonight, okay? Originally, we started this